Hi, everyone. My name is Devon Fuller. I'm from with Center of Life, and we are on our second part of our series, Ask a Teacher, and we are focusing on math tonight. So once again, we have our wonderful staff members here from Propel, and I'll let you all take it away.
Great. Thanks so much for having us. So today, like Devon said, we're going to be starting with our Ask a Math Teacher session. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to share my screen so you guys can all see the presentation. Can everybody see it? Okay, good. So we have some math educators today here with us, and we also have some support staff members here with us. But before we get into introductions, we're going to start with some session norms. So just remember we're on Zoom, so all the Zoom rules apply, mute and unmute, try to give everybody a chance to talk. We'll let you know when it's time to have questions or comments, and if you want to put something in the chat, feel free. I have that open on my computer as well. We'll help monitor that. If you have specific education concerns about coursework, technology, or personal scholar questions, you can feel free to pop that in the chat with me, and we can speak privately, or I can connect you directly to your scholar's teacher, because we're going to be talking more about the overarching idea of like how to help your kid with math, and not necessarily my child has a problem with this specific problem number 2 on page 7. So just really thinking about those overarching like big strategies is where we're going to go today. And just remember that this is being recorded, and we would encourage you to not use your children's names unless you want your children's names recorded and shared. But we probably know who your scholars are, so no need to use your child's name. And just remember that, you know, anything you'd like to keep confidential, we can talk about it privately. So introductions. Oh, first the agenda. Introductions is first, and then we're going to hear from Ms. Gooden about how to keep focused during this time where we switch between virtual and online and hybrid in-person learning. And then we're going to hear from the math teachers about math tips. And then there's going to be time for questions at the end. And we also had our parent action team come up with some questions as well. So we have a variety of questions to go through. Before we move on to introductions, does anybody have any questions about the session norms or the agenda? So the introductions is to introduce yourself, and we can all just introduce ourselves verbally if we're okay with that. And you can say your name and either your position at the school, whether or not you have your kids in your own kids in school, and what grade your kids are in. So I'll start. My name is Miss Sonnet. I'm the community site coordinator at Propel Hazelwood. I do a lot of community connection with the Hazelwood community, and then I also connect parents to as many resources as we can find. I don't have any kids in school, but it's nice that I have 280 to look after. So does anybody who, last time I called on people and that seemed to work pretty well. So
I can go, Rachel, it's fine. I'm Brian Stephanie. I'm the 7th and 8th grade math teacher at Propel Hazelwood. I actually have 2 children of my own, a 13-year-old 7th grader and a soon-to-be 10-year-old 4th grader. And I can't remember if there was something else I was supposed to talk about, Rachel, but
no, that's it.
That's sufficient. Okay, so I'll pass it along to Ms. Veason.
Hi, I'm Christina Veason from Propel Hazelwood, and I am the kindergarten teacher. And my children are all little adults now, and 2 of them are in college. So they are no longer in grade school, high school. So it's been fun this year.
I guess I'll go next. I'm probably the only parent, which is cool. I'm David Greenlee. My kids go to Propel Aubrey and Malik. Ages, I forget sometimes, 11 and 5. And right now I'm a homemaker seeking employment. I'm keep positive.
I can go. I'm Tina Mayer. I'm the principal here at Propel. Like Ms. Mason, I have a 19-year-old daughter who is in her first year of college, and it has been virtual. So I feel all parents' pains with virtual instruction. So nice to see you, Mr. Greenlee.
I could go next. My name is Lonnie Gooden, and I'm the prevention specialist at Propel Hazelwood, and I do not have any children in school.
Hi, I'm Katie Lakowski, and I'm the 5-6 math educator at Propel Hazelwood, and I also do not have any children of my own.
Great, thanks everyone. I think it's interesting to, on our last call, we ended up as educators also pulling on a lot of our own personal experiences. So I just thought that was interesting to, see where like, Miss Veason might be pulling some other ideas about online schooling from her college experience with her own child. So the one thing I did not mention, if you are watching this and you are not a Propel scholar, this will still be relevant to you. We are steering more into the realm of like overarching how to help with math generally. So this is not like a Propel specific question and answer series. So feel free to keep watching. I just wanted to make that clear for the Hazelwood families that may have tuned in online. So now we're going to kick it over to Miss Gooden, who is going to talk about how to stay motivated at home when you're learning online.
So actually, the first thing we're going to be discussing is how to keep your child focused while at home, or if they're even engaging in hybrid learning. So one of the first things that I think is really helpful in keeping your child focused is a peaceful setting. So if you can provide that, have them in like a quiet space where they're able to really just focus and pay attention to their computer or whatever they're learning online. And maybe if possible, like keeping them away from like siblings and stuff so they're not overhearing other lessons and things like that. Another thing would be taking away distractions. I know a lot of times like kids want to be close to their phones, they want to hold on to them, or like maybe if they're working in their room, they want to have like a video game close by or something like that. But just trying to like take away distractions while they're online so that they are able to focus. The next thing would be to make a to-do list, schedule, or a routine. It's really important that kids stay on a routine or a schedule. So like sleeping routine, so like going to bed at the same time, waking up at the same time. And I know for our students, like we have a different schedule, maybe like on Friday versus like a Monday. And sometimes, you want to get up later, you want to like sleep in a little bit, but it's really important just to keep that same schedule so they know what to expect. And also making like a to-do list would be nice, even if it's visual, like a visual for the kids. Like while they're in school, a lot of times like the teachers have their schedule posted somewhere so they know what is next. And I think that really helps them, keep track of what they're looking for and what they will be doing throughout the day. The next thing is to take breaks. It is a lot being on the computer all day, or if they're in school, it is a whole lot of like just while looking at the computer, your eyes get tired, you get tired, you might get a headache. So let your child take, just a little break, maybe like 5 minutes or so, just to rest their eyes. And, whenever they're ready to come back, just have them come back and they'll be more alert and ready to learn. The next thing would be healthy snacks and like hydration, making sure that they're eating some healthy snacks if you have them available, or in hydration, just drinking water, having maybe like water nearby so that they can drink water and things like that as they're learning. Because that is stuff like we have in school. Like currently, the kids who are in hybrid, they do have water bottles with them in class so that they're able to hydrate throughout the day. Going back to like routine schedule, but just making rest and sleep a priority. Right now, obviously, with just things are so different. It's really important just to sleep, but it's just so hard to, because you're home all day and you might, sleep throughout the day. Like I know, like sometimes I want to take a nap after work, and then that just messes up my sleep routine. And I know for kids, that's the same way. Um, and if possible, try to join them. Like if they're sitting in class, maybe sit next to them off to the side, just to, watch and see. Like, because even in class, there's a teacher monitoring them throughout the day. But if you can, just like, every now and then, just check in on them, see what they're doing, see if they're paying attention, make sure they're not on their phone and things like that. And if they know someone's around watching them, they're less likely to try to, pull out the video game or the phone, or maybe get on their computer and do something else. Rachel, you can go to the next slide. So how to how to stay motivated at home. And this could go for adults and for children, but going back to the importance of establishing structure and routine. Again, when kids come to school, they know their structure, they know what time they go to lunch, they know what time recess is, and when they have breaks and such. So it's really important to, keep that up at home. And whenever we get back to school and it's regular, like school normal, they'll be, used to having a schedule. It won't be like starting over for them. While being like establishing structure and routine, you also want to be flexible. Things change every day. I mean, as we know now, like we've had a lot of snow days and things like that. So just try to be flexible if possible. So, just maybe sometimes just have them again taking a break or things like that. Just be open to being flexible, because that is something in school we try to do too, with like brain breaks. I know a lot of teachers do those and things like that, just to break up the day a little bit. Maintain accountability. So a lot of times I know a lot of parents, just maintain accountability for their children, but trying to make sure the kids understand that they are accountable for their learning too. Like just making sure they understand the importance of being in school. And some other things I saw about that was maybe having a peer, like have them keep them accountable. So like, meeting with their friends and, them reminding them like, you need to do your homework or you need to be on the computer. So they just have like a little buddy system, and that could be with siblings as well. Um, Let them see progress. So a lot of times kids want to see their grades. They want to see, what they did or how they did on a test. So it is important to let them see, their grades and things like that, so they know how to improve or what they need to improve on. And then that would also increase communication with the teachers. And if they know the teacher's looking out and willing to help them, they will stay more motivated at home. Praising effort. So again, this is different for everyone. It is important, to praise effort when the kids are trying. It may, this is difficult for them too. But if you see them trying their best, be sure to just praise their effort and acknowledge that. And lastly, incentives. Just trying something like maybe at the end of the day, you get to watch a movie if you finish your schoolwork, or just like an extra snack or whatever you find appropriate for your child. Just make sure, you have some incentive, because kids obviously work off of that. And at school, we use incentives, maybe like a break or like 5 minutes of extra recess time if they do well. So it is important to do that at home. And looking at the picture over here that says 20 things to say to encourage your children, just a few that I thought was important. And I know it's a little difficult to read, but a few that I like is like, great job. Thank you for doing that. Way to go. I'm really proud of you. That was so kind. And then like, even if they learn something at school, say like, I'd love to hear more about what you learned in school. So that's something too that would keep them motivated, because they see somebody else is interested in what they're learning and what they're doing.
Great, thanks. I just wanted to open up the floor to anybody, like if you wanted to unmute and see if, talk about if your child has been becoming less focused, or you've had, implemented some tips and tricks or things in your own house to keep them focused and motivated. We really want to hear from you all.
Yes, that is why I am on here. My daughter has problems focusing, and I have to always join her in class. And Miss Veason is my witness. She has a very hard time focusing, and I don't know. I guess I really need help with her, but she does such a great job. But at the end of the day, that's her problem. She doesn't focus, and she can't recall stories that she just read. You know, we have to read them 3, 4, sometimes 5 times. You know, I get aggravated, take a break, start over again. But I need some input with that. But she's awesome. She just doesn't remember anything.
I think too, for her being like she's in kindergarten, this is like her first introduction,
Yeah,
to school. And this is so different than what, that would usually look like. So just like we were talking about before, just having like in our last one, we talked about like just growth mindset, just automatic, thinking, she will improve and things will get better and things like that. And also I could reach out to Miss Beeson and we can give you some tips, some additional tips too of what you could do with her
yeah.
and helping with being focused. So we'll definitely do that.
Miss Visa's been awesome. I love her.
Thank you. And I know that we talked even for the little ones, not just for your child, but for any of the younger children. We've talked about screen time and how they typically wouldn't have this much screen time.
Yeah,
But in addition to that, with recall and focus, asking like questions after so many problems or after so many sentences helps them with some of that recall because it keeps them actively engaged in what they're doing. And then another thing, like she is actually doing pretty well. I feel for, what's been going on this school year and everything. She is learning and growing. I would say some tricks for her to keep her focused, just like in my classroom, if I have kids in the classroom, what worked yesterday might not work today for that same student. So you have to have like a very large toolkit to pull from and keep switching things up. So if like her preferred activity changes or a child's preferred activity changes or preferred reward changes, then you need to change that incentive to go along with it so that they don't get bored of it, and then there's something new to look forward to. So I would say like just figure what is the reason that, like, I would think about like what's the reason that you think that they're becoming unfocused, and then like is the incentive helping them to stride to get to that point where you want them to be. So like if the incentive's not really working, then we want to switch that up. If they're not focused for another reason because there are distractions around, maybe taking away those distractions. So just like being very keen on what's actually happening in that for each child in their own setting as to what could possibly help them become more focused.
Yeah, I think that's all really great advice. And I I also just can't like stress enough that kids in school get to move a lot. Like they get to go to the bathroom, they get to walk to the cafeteria. Like even I have a step tracker, and when I'm at home working, I walk 1,000 steps a day. And when I'm in school, like today, I have 7,000 steps. So I have time to get all that energy out, and those little kids need time to get their energy out. So even like telling it in a kindergartner, you can say like, I bet you can't do 15 jumping jacks, and they will. Like something as simple as that, just to get them moving. Because it's look, she's ready, we're gonna do them. But yeah, I would say that's also a tip that I have, and I've had work with kids in the past, is just give them time to move. They're kids, they want to be active. Did anybody else have anything to ask Miss Gooden about, these tips or anything they wanted to bring up? Okay, so we're going to move on to the math section of the evening. So what this will look like is we'll hear from a few of the teachers on the call about why Common Core, which is a question that we get quite a bit. And then we're going to go over how you guys should know what level your kids are at and why that's important. And then we're going to talk about how to help your scholar with their math homework or coursework and the best way to go about that. And then we asked each teacher to just speak for a little bit about their own personal experience. So I believe Miss Lukowski is up next.
Okay, so I just wanted to take a couple minutes to kind of talk about Common Core. Common Core math has somewhat turned into a four-letter word. You know, a lot of people are very hesitant about Common Core. So I was thinking the other day, back to when I was in college, and a professor of mine had said that education is on a pendulum. And I don't know if I really fully understood or really just thought about what she meant by that. But then thinking about math and being a math teacher now for the second year, I thought, okay, so I'm willing to bet that just about everybody on this call, when we learned math, it was here. And now that education, again, is on that pendulum, it has now shifted over here to where we have not learned math the way that our children are currently learning math. So I get this question a lot, definitely during parent-teacher conferences, like, I can't help my child with this. This isn't how I learned math. So the best way that I can really talk about why Common Core is really that word why. Just really thinking about the why behind why things in math work. So not necessarily focusing on getting the correct answer, but why is it the correct answer? And why am I doing each one of these steps? In all of the math across Propel, we have math norms, and one of our math norms is specifically says the answers are important, but they're not the math. And that definitely really talks about Common Core just in that whole statement, because it isn't about the right answer, to where I feel like when most of us were in school, that was it. It was the answer. That was it. As long as you came up with the right answer, that was all. It didn't matter if you understood how you got that answer or did you just get lucky. But now there's really that push for being able to explain why. Why does my answer make sense? Why is this answer this way? Why is 3 times 3 9? I know personally, when I was in school, I just knew 3 times 3 was 9 because it was. I don't know if I ever really grasped the concept of that it's repeated addition. So really, when you're sitting down trying to help your scholar with math, take a look at it and think about, okay, why? What is the concept that they're doing? Are they multiplying? Okay, so why would they need to do this step? What are they learning? What is the Common Core forcing them to learn that they can interpret into a real life situation to really be able to understand why things are the way that they are in math? It also develops different methods by learning style. Kids learn in all different ways. As adults, we all learn in different ways. I'm a very hands-on learner, and I don't know if I really understood that until college, that if I am able to manipulate things or have things in front of me that I can touch and see and feel, things make more sense to me. And that is also a thing the Common Core does. It reaches all those different learning styles to where kids can manipulate things. They are able to draw pictures or write out their thoughts. And again, it goes back to that the answers are important, but it's not the math. And then moving beyond memorization, I think I touched on that, just how, when we learned multiplication, I just knew 3 times 3 is 9. I memorized those. I remember sitting there with flashcards over and over and over again. And if I knew that 3 times 3 was 9, I got to put a little raindrop on the cubby, and I was so excited. But again, what kind of foundation was I really learning about math specifically, being able to memorize that 3 times 3 was 9? Does anybody have any specific questions exactly like about Common Core? I know it's really kind of like a hard thing I could probably talk about it for the full hour. So.
I'll just piggyback off of what Ms. Lakowski was saying, that really the Common Core is about pushing the visual aspect of mathematics, right? Being able to see what's actually happening when you multiply 3 times 3. And then being able to apply that visual to a real world context. And I think that's where it moves much further beyond memorization, right? It becomes something that's much more, some would say, theoretical and foundational, really, to understanding how it interacts with our daily life. So Rachel, you can go to the next slide. So the Council for Great City Schools has these roadmaps that they've put together that summarize really nicely the Common Core standards for each grade. So if you, we can probably share this link on the, and Rachel, if you wanted to click, that'd be fabulous. We can just go through, but we can probably share this link as well. So when you follow the link, you're going to be presented with a list of a roadmap, basically a digital booklet for each grade from kindergarten all the way to high school. And they have 2 versions. I prefer the PDF, the version that's being brought up now, which is just a nice list. There's another digital magazine, which may be good for like an iPad or something. On a computer, it's not quite as nice. But basically, they walk through and explain a little bit of what Ms. Lakowski was talking about, just kind of the essence of what the Common Core is, and then give kind of a nice overview for the particular grade that you're focused on. So in this case, it looks like we might be on 7th grade. It's going to give you kind of the general overview and some bullet points on what's focused on in 7th grade and the why, what's the purpose of approaching math the way that it's approached for this particular age group in this particular grade. And as you go further down, one of the really nice things that they have is that they provide that summary for 7th grade in this particular instance. And then they give you the bookends to show you what is focused on in 6th grade and how that connects to what's being focused on in 7th grade. And then what is focused on in 7th grade connects to what's going to happen next year in 8th grade. So if you have a student in any particular grade, you're able to see kind of this broader picture of the connections that are being made all around the Common Core, right? And then what the content that this is going to be focused on. So you can then have a good understanding, when you're, working with your child on the particular math that they're working through and throughout the year, you have an understanding on what that whole year is going to look like and what they're going to be approaching. Maybe if they're on a particular bullet, you can see where they're at and the next few things that they're going to be working on. So these are great. I really, they have some really good resources in there at the very end of each of these. There's a couple of links you can follow. There's an example here, which is really nice. I mean, there's all kinds of different information that you can use to kind of get a really good understanding. Again, the visual aspect, Rachel, if you wanted to stop there and scroll up a second, this is, they give you a problem and they give you the solution, and then they give you that visual, which is really what we're all working through, as teachers and as students as well, right? I mean, understanding not only how to solve a problem to get the answer, but to understand that foundation and the essence of what's happening with the math. And to see that, I think, is really powerful. So these are really good examples, again, from all grades, really nice resource. And then usually at the very end, there's a couple of links that they'll provide where you can go further either into the Common Core, or you can find some math games. This figurethis.org has a nice little link there. There's some fun activities you can do there with your child or children to push your own thinking, and to push their thinking in terms of the math with that they're studying and to connect it with Common Core standards. So really nice resources there. Yeah, there was a comment in the chat. Great resource. It really is. I highly recommend it. We'll put the link, we'll make the link available, and then definitely check it out.
Yeah, I'll pop the link in the chat, and then when we share this, the links in the presentation are clickable. So you'll get a PDF version of this, and you can click all the links and go through and find them there. And I do agree. I think that like bookend of, oh, your kid's in first grade and here's where they should be from last year and here's where they're going, I think is that like ties in with that growth mindset piece we're talking about of like giving a reason and purpose behind what we're doing and not just, oh, I'm teaching you this because you have a test in a week, which is like not a good motivation. So I really encourage, like, I wish I had had this when I was a kid studying math, so I understood things more. Like, I think this is also good for upper level, 6th, 7th, 8th grade students could also read this themselves and kind of have a better understanding of what they're doing without, you know, that parent guidance. But I would say the younger grades would want a parent or a guardian to guide them.
In addition, that same topic that you're on with the bookends and having your grade in the middle helps with what we as teachers would call remediation or enrichment. Because if you're looking at your grade level, that was the blue in the middle. And then if you think about like, well, my child's struggling with this addition, then you can look to see, well, what were they missing from the year prior that might help them if we focus on some of those skills that could help bring them up to where they need to be for grade level. So sometimes you remediate by focusing on some of those skills in the lower grade so that they're able to really enhance those skills in the grade that they're in. And then even if your child says that they're getting bored or you notice that they're flying through problems, having that next grade is great because that would be the enrichment piece to push them a little bit further to gain those extra skills. Even though they're not in that grade, you can push them ahead and they can gain that information, especially if they're bored, they might be ready for that material. So keeping them in their own grade frame isn't always exactly what you want to do. You want to be able to remediate for kids that need help or enrich those children that need extra.
Great, thanks. And then, so now that we kind of talked about like, why are we learning this way and how should we, like, where should your kid, you know, be at in the school year and what do they have to look forward to? Now we're going to talk about how to help your scholar with the math that they bring home.
So I'm going to go ahead and run through these bullet points with you, how to help your scholar with their math. So some of the things that we had talked about as teachers is if you don't know something, ask. If a child doesn't understand and they don't ask a question, there's not a way for the teacher to know that they aren't getting it besides seeing their work come in and seeing that they're not doing well. So while they're in class, that's the time that they have that they can really talk to the teachers, or they can send their teachers messages or ask the next day, like, I was really struggling with this. Is there another way that we could do this problem, or could you further explain that? And then using the growth mindset toolkit from last week when we were in the Ask a Teacher session, making sure that children, I had, for example, a child in my class today said, I don't know. I said, well, we're not going to say, I don't know. We're going to say, I'll find the answer. So changing those I don't knows, I'm not sures, and some of those, the verbiage that children try to use to get out of doing the work, or that further makes them think that they really can't do it, and changing the way, the wording so that they have other words to use that will help them understand that maybe they don't know it right now, but they can learn it. So it's that power of yet. I might not know it yet, but I'm going to try to figure it out. And then the next one is leading your children through a question. So at home, especially, giving the child an answer is not going to help them. So this is how to help them much better. You can go over the directions with them again, or have them listen to directions. I would even add to that sometimes I have kids repeat the directions, so I know they're really engaged with those directions. Asking them where they think they should begin. Like, what do you think you should do? Instead of telling them what to do. asking them to find their notes or the example problems. So I know a lot of teachers have the children take notes in class, especially in the upper grades. And in K2, I know that we put some example problems into Seesaw where the kids can listen to those examples before they try it on their own. And definitely attending those morning meetings or afternoon meetings so that they're getting the skills in their classrooms. Don't do the problem for them. That's the biggest thing. Guide them through the problem, but you've already been to school. You don't need to do more schoolwork. I'm sure everybody's busy and has all of their own things to do with work, especially through COVID. So doing the problem for them is just teaching them that they don't have to work through it on their own. Guiding them through working through it is what's going to help them to make those connections. And then being a math role model and having a good attitude about math. So helping them with their work, like I said, guiding them through the work, showing them, like, if you do it one, then they can do some. So showing them that you use math in your everyday life. Like if you're counting out change, you could have them help you. Or even if you're at a store for some of the younger ones, like we need 3 cans of raviolis or whatever you're buying at the store, having them just do some math while you're in your regular mode of whatever you're doing for the day. And then the last one is homework help tips comprised from an article. And then there's an article that you can go to that will be shared out where you can get some homework help tips. I would also say that don't be afraid to reach out to your children's teachers, because as one of the teachers, I am always happy to share more information. And I know a lot of the teachers would rather hear from a parent or a child than have that child struggle. We want them to be successful. So we would love to know if a child's really struggling with something, we want to hear about that. Or if a child's saying that they're bored, we want to know about that too, so that we know that they need to be pushed forward or get more work. So anything that you're noticing at home, especially through COVID, we have to be a team in order for the children to be successful. Neither one of us can do it alone. So having, I know a lot of my families are very good with communicating with me, and it's really helping the children to move forward.
Great. Before we move on to the individual teacher tips and tricks, does anybody have any questions from the last few slides about the math work and how to encourage our kids to really do well? There is one thing I'd like to add with the homework help section. If you are like tempted to pick up your pencil for your child's math homework, stop. That's the sign that you're about to do it for them. Like, just don't even pick up the pencil. I've been there. I used to help kids with math all the time. It's so easy to just be like, no, you do it this way. But really use your words to explain, or write on a whiteboard away from their paper so that you're not tempted to just, it's really tempting. So if nobody has any questions, we'll move forward into these little teacher snippets from each teacher.
So for mine, I always tell kids to slow down, especially in kindergarten. Sometimes they tend to go really quick and try to count or complete the activities. But the slower they go, the better it is, because they're not skipping numbers or putting an extra number in there. And then listen to the directions again if they're not sure what to do. So they can listen to the directions. I always tell them, I'm like, you can listen to the directions 100 times so that you understand what you're supposed to do. And that it's very important, especially in kindergarten, all the grades. If they don't know the directions, then they're not going to know how to solve the problem. Rechecking their answer. So when they complete the problem, I always tell them, check yourself, make sure that you got the right answer. Don't just give me the first answer you got, go back, check it again. If you get the same answer the second time around, chances are you did it well. And then asking your children to explain how they did the math is important, because if they're able to teach it to you, then they have really got it.
I can go. You know, there's a lot of resources out there right now. That more resources have come about in the past year or so that are online, just given our circumstances. So there's just a ton out there. One of the resources that I've used personally, and that my kids have used, and it continues to just be a great resource, is Khan Academy. It's free, which is the best price. So I highly recommend it. They have a lot of material, and you know, I know some of the kiddos might not be a fan of the style of the videos or whatever, but I mean, it's just hard to resist going in that direction with Khan, just because they cover everything. So really, if there's something that you're stumped on as a parent, or you know that you're helping your child with, and you're both unsure of, Khan is kind of, you know, it's a really great avenue to go towards in terms of figuring out what to do. There's a lot of great examples, so that's something I would continue to recommend. Again, as Ms. Veason mentioned, use real world experiences to teach math. There's just so many opportunities throughout our day where we're interacting with the world in a mathematical way, whether that's going to the grocery store, the bank, or doing anything around the house. There's lots of opportunities to be curious and to draw your child into that curiosity. You know, maybe there's, and this is one of the things I was going to add to what Ms. Veason was just talking about, was you don't always have to have the answer. You know, a lot of times, I think we, as parents especially, we feel pressure that we have to have the answer when our kids don't know. But it's okay not to have that answer, you know. And I think a lot of times, if there's something that you're curious about, your children will naturally be curious as well, if you can draw them into that. So yeah, if you're at the grocery store and there's an interesting opportunity to talk about something mathematical or do some counting, maybe you don't have the answer, maybe you both can figure it out together. So that's just a cool opportunity to think about interacting with math in the real world. And really just, you know, touching on the idea of teaching your scholars or your students, your children, to be advocates for themselves, you know, giving them opportunities to ask questions, to be curious about their surroundings. You know, one of the things that I think, you know, as younger kids, especially, we have those well visits, we go to the doctor a lot, give them an opportunity to generate some questions. Maybe you plant some questions for them ahead of time that they can then interact with a doctor or a professional in some fashion to ask questions. I think those are maybe not even mathematical questions, but just good opportunities for them to advocate for themselves. You know, that way it's, you know, going to the doctor isn't just something that happens, it's something that they can be a part of, right? That they're interacting with those that are around them. And then you can grow from there to do that kind of thing with all kinds of opportunities in daily life. So really giving the scholars a chance and an opportunity to think about how to ask questions and to really foster that curiosity.
So I definitely agree for sure with the, you know, using those real world experiences, because that also helps kids fully understand the why behind needing to learn something. I mean, I'll own, I was that kid in 9th grade algebra. Why do I need to know this? I'm never going to use this in my life. And here I am, you know, 20 plus years later teaching math. But really just to be able to make those connections and really focus on, why am I going to need to know this? Am I doing this just because this is school? I'm a kid, I have to know how to do this, but really to make those connections. So I really think that that is a great tip, to connect it in any way that you can. Some things that I really push in my classrooms as well. I notice a lot of times kids are in a big hurry, so definitely piggybacking off Miss Beeson to really slow down. Sometimes kids are reading questions so fast, and a lot of things in math are word problems, but to really just like take a step back and think logically about your answers. For instance, in 6th grade, we're finding percentages and numbers. If you're saying that 9 is 50% of 6, if you really think logically about that, it doesn't make sense. Because if if like the half is more than what the 100% is, it doesn't make sense. So really just really sit back and think about, does my answer make sense? And if it doesn't fully make sense, go back and see where maybe you trailed off a little bit. but also making sure that you fully understand what the question is asking you. I have a lot of times, one thing that I really like to instill in scholars is to, when they read word problems, to read it through once, go back through and read it sentence by sentence, underline some keywords, underline something that maybe you don't understand, but most importantly, to really think at the end of it, what is this problem asking me to do? What is my goal of this question? And again, to read the question again and ask yourself, does the answer make sense? So what is the question asking me? Here is my answer. Does my answer make sense in terms to what the question is asking me? So those are a lot of like little things that I like to try to encourage students to do, because math is logical. So if your answer isn't logical, then there's a small mistake somewhere.
Great. I think that we probably have time for one or two questions before we make it to the end of our hour together. Does anybody on the call have any questions about something that's going on with their own students or something they've always wondered about?
I do have a question. I have a student who she seems like she's very interested in math, and I did see that you said some math, the resource that they can kind of look ahead. Is that putting too much on a student to gradually get them to see a little bit ahead of their grade in math?
I would say that's totally acceptable. I mean, I would certainly expose them. Yeah, if you have someone that's interested in math, and they have a pretty firm grasp on where they're at and where they're going, yeah, certainly. I mean, seeing the roadmap ahead and might actually pique their interest even more. You know what I mean? Just in terms of seeing something that's unfamiliar. Like they might recognize some things as they look ahead a little bit. Like, oh, like I kind of recognize parts of what they're doing, but there's some things that look totally foreign to me. That can be a really good thing, right? It's just it might make them want to just dive in even further. So yeah, I don't think that that would scare them off. Just depending on the context, right? I mean, obviously, if they're being presented with work that's much more advanced and there's pressure put on them to do well or something, that might be different. But as long as there's no pressure, additional pressure put on them, and it's just an opportunity, I think most students gravitate towards that as a pretty cool thing.
Thank you.
So we also had some questions that parents submitted that they couldn't be here tonight. And one of them was, they feel like sometimes they go through all the example problems with their child and the child still isn't quite grasping the material, but there's no more work for them to work through them with because they've already done all the problems. What would you say to a parent that's experiencing that?
They could definitely reach out to their grade level teacher, because we all have extra resources that we could push out so that they could still work through different problems with their children if they feel like that child did not learn that skill set. And also, I would assume, or I would hope that as a teacher, if I see that a child's struggling with something and they're not getting the answers, I would still be remediating, even though we've passed, if you're focusing on shapes and you go into addition or you're going into number sense, I would still be remediating for those kids that didn't understand shapes. And sometimes it cycles through and we go back to shapes later on. But you can always reach out to your child's teacher as a resource to try to get additional resources for children, so that they are able to, gain those skills.
I would also think that that is like a super great opportunity to even get that real life experience in there. So as Miss Beeson said, identifying shapes. Okay, I have no more practice problems with what shape is this. You have a million shapes at home. You know, so even just to say, okay, well, we don't have any practice problems, but let's look for something in the house that's shaped like a triangle, or, you know, look at the ball. What shape is that? Just connecting those real life experiences, even though you don't have a practice problem right in front of you, just trying to pull those things in from home and the world around you.
And I would just quickly add that if you have a student that's maybe at a more advanced level of math, and they've gone through the practice problems, like maybe they're doing linear equations or something like that. Maybe they've started some entry level algebra. Those resources that we shared with the parent guides on the core standards could be a really good place to go to, you know, just to see, okay, well, what came before this? You know, what were some of the things that were covered that maybe there's something there foundationally, you know, they might be able to get through solving single step equations, but there's something that's not clicking for them. Maybe that you need to go back. Maybe there's something there that you can pick up on just to try a little practice on some other activity or a content area. That could be another thing as well.
Yeah, I think that's all really good advice. And I agree that like you just need to really, I think, lean on teachers in this time because they want to help. And I think that a lot of parents are afraid of being over communicative, like they're becoming a problem. But I don't think that, and I'm not a teacher, but from what I hear from teachers, that's not the case. They want to hear from you, especially about their kids learning, because they just want them to do as best as they can. So if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us over email or by phone. I will put my contact information in the slides. So when it gets sent out, you guys will have that. And then keep an eye out I think you'll get the email from Kiyomi. It will have the recording and the slide deck. And yeah, it was so great to be here tonight with all of you and have a chance to talk about this subject and get to hear from some parents. Have a good night.
Thank you all for coming.
Yes, thanks
Thank
for
you.
hosting us.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Aubrey wants to say bye.